Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to WOLB 1010 AM Talk Radio. This is Carol Muleta of Parenting 411, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. I've teed up a great topic for you today. It is part 2 in my series, Countdown to College. And the title is Decisions. As many people know, May 1st is D-Day when it comes to making your college choice. After all of the testing and the college visits and applications and financial aid and all of that, it all comes down to May 1st, where you have to sign on the dotted line and send in your deposit, and you're ready to go. And so for those of you who have not quite ventured on this path yet, you've probably heard, though, that it can be pretty stressful. And so today we're going to take a look at the path that many parents and teens, because it really is a family affair, although the teen should be taking the lead, to making this choice that is going to really set the course for the teen's life. They're helping them to figure out where they're going to be, what they're going to be studying, and the life's work that they will be preparing for. So to give us a little insight and a few tales from that journey, I have some guests joining me. First up, we will hear from Dr. Ralph Perino, and next we will hear from Dr. Linda McGee. Now, let me tell you a little bit about them. Dr. Ralph Perino is a college professor. He is an education advocate. He has been very much concerned over 37 years about education from the K to 12 level and obviously in higher education. He is, as I said, a professor at Northern Virginia Community College, which is the second largest community college system in the country. He is also an author, and he's written an insightful book, Issues, Strategies, and Concerns in Education Today. And it's a collection of essays that looks at education and socialization of students from early education to high school. It also offers perspectives on post-secondary education from the perspective of both the institutions as well as parents and students. And he also looks at post-secondary education from the perspective of parents and students when they are going through the college search, from the selection process, standardized testing, and financial aid, and all of that. And then we will hear from Linda McGee, who is a clinical psychologist. She works with children and teens on a wide range of challenging issues, not the least of which can be school. You know that school is the second home for our children for a very large chunk of their lives, their early lives. So very often she does have to offer some ideas about what school settings would be most suitable for children. And she has worked both in private and public schools, helping children navigate challenging issues. And she also has her own private practice. And then finally, she is the parent of a graduating senior. So she is fresh off this journey, and I know that she's going to have a lot of great insights to share with us. So I want to welcome them both. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Linda. How are you doing?
Good, great. How about yourself?
I'm doing fine. And I just I'm glad that you were able to join us, and I know Ralph will be with us as well. And I'm looking forward to this because, well, how are you feeling right now?
You talking to me?
Yes. How are you feeling?
We are tired. It's a long process, and very happy to be at the end of it.
Okay.
I'm trying to settle in now and do a little bit of celebrating and a little bit of sadness, though, to see your child, my only, grow up and leave.
Now, tell our listeners about how your work intersects with teens and their families as they're navigating this path to college.
Good portion of my practice has to do with I see kids between 16 and 18. Okay. That's about 30-40% of my practice. And I help them and their parents, as importantly, navigate this process. And many of them in my practice, which is based in Chevy Chase, are dealing with the college process at its most competitive levels.
Mm-hmm.
And the people, a lot of the kids that I see are aiming toward the highest schools for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that process is pretty tense,
Right.
and it's heavily competitive.
Right. I can certainly imagine that. And so, what excuse me, what has this year been like for you?
It's been way more work than I even would have anticipated, and I give speeches and talk to kids and parents about stress, college process.
Okay.
A lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of helping your child stay focused on the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, it's not a predictable process, so you might have good results for places that you didn't expect,
Okay.
and iffy results on places you would have expected. So it's been a very unpredictable process,
Okay.
but ultimately it's been, I learned a lot about my son.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot about myself. So it's ultimately been a good, strong process for us.
Okay.
And ultimately successful, but not without its struggles.
Okay, and we will get to that in a minute. Let me bring Ralph into the conversation. Hello, Ralph. How are you?
Hi, Carol.
I wanted to have you to share a little bit about your background and how it positioned you to write the book. I did tell our listeners about the book.
Sure. Actually, I heard you mention that Linda has a daughter who's graduating this year.
Yeah, she has a son.
My wife and I have two sons, both of whom have graduated high school and college and are successfully working on their own, so there is hope.
Right.
So for Linda, just so you'll know, it's a
I'm
long
happy
slog.
to hear
It's
that,
hard,
Dr.
but
Perino.
in the end, it can happen. It takes good parenting, obviously. But to speak a little bit about myself, I was raised by a single mom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the product of New Jersey public schools. I grew up in a very blue-collar, working-class, ethnic environment.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled a lot academically. I had a tough time getting into college. I did get in.
Mm-hmm.
I almost flunked out. It gave me a level of awareness and sensitivity about struggling students that I still carry with me today. And it's always inspired me to help kids. And it's one of the reasons why I teach at a community college versus a large university, because I feel like at a community college, I can not only teach them sociology or political science, which is what I teach, but I can also transfer some of those experiences that I had when I was their age and give them some practical advice on how not to do what I did. So I think my personal background helps me be a better teacher, a better educator, a better business owner, a better parent, better a lot of things, and so that's me.
Okay. And I should also tell our listeners as well that Ralph also has his own tutoring firm, so he provides support to students that way as well. So
that's correct. We've been in business 23 years now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what were you hoping to achieve when you set out to write this book? It's very interesting and really a lot of wide-ranging issues for those that are taking a look at our education system here in this country.
Yeah, I've been in education for the better part of 35 or 40 years. My wife and she taught in Fairfax for 34 years, so we've got lots of experience. I have lots of ideas. And the book sort of coalesced over a period of 8 or 9 years of writing essays. Mm-hmm. But my goal was to help people, help students with similar issues, as I mentioned earlier, that I had when I was younger, and to try to expose issues that people often don't hear addressed in the media. Things like, for example, the digital divide between wealthy kids and poor kids, the impact of the socialization process and the importance of the family. There's a lot of research being done in the area of grit.
Yes.
There's a social psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania, Angela Duckworth, who's done a lot of work in the area of grit, determination, perseverance, resolve, and what is it about some students that they're able to overcome adversity and still be successful. Things like matching your degree with the job market. And last but not least, there's lots in the book, but last but not least, money. How do you do it? And when do you begin saving? What's the best college to go to? What's the most cost-effective way of going about it? So my reason for or the goal of the book was really to expose people to a wide range of issues that I think the media really doesn't touch on very often.
Right. And I tell you, on the subject of grit, and I'm sure we will get into this in our open discussion, but colleges really would do well to take a look at that and to try to see in terms of helping children to succeed. I shouldn't say children because then they're young adults at college, right. But helping them to develop it if they don't have it, and actually kind of putting some things in place in that freshman year. I know they do a lot of courses, kind of freshman required courses and things like that, but really to step out of the coursework and really try to provide some supports for some of those students in that first year. To those that have grit, that's great, and
right.
But those that don't, that kind of made it that far without having developed it, kind of laying some groundwork to help them to do that and
one
succeed.
Of the things I mentioned in the book is the colleges are increasingly developing offices on retention management. There are actually offices in colleges and universities that are there to retain students, minority students and struggling students. There are even degrees. University of Miami offers a degree in retention management, so it's become a part of the administrative process in colleges and universities. So the whole idea of keeping kids in school once they're accepted is becoming more and more important because, of course, it's a business.
Right.
And if you lose the student, you're losing money. So.
Right. I just want to just kind of make sure that they kind of step back and kind of insert a little compassion into that process
Absolutely.
As well.
And recognize that there's more to determining whether a student's going to be successful other than just GPA and SAT.
Right.
That's so many other factors.
And the fact of the matter is they don't really have any gauge by which they're looking at the kids' grit, Dr. Perino, especially on the competitive level. They see what their parents and them have packaged together. They see their GPA and they see their SAT, but they have no idea whether that child can withstand any kind of challenge.
Exactly.
And any kind of setback.
Right.
Yep. There need to be more subjective criteria, not just the numbers, the objective criteria.
And as a parent of an African-American boy, I was particularly looking at the support systems at the universities and increasingly looking at how they retain their students.
Right. Now, since we are talking a bit about retention, what do you think is a good retention rate for colleges? And we're referring then to the percentage of students, college freshmen, who are able to come back and for the sophomore year and presumably continue. What's a good retention rate?
You want me to answer that one?
Yes. Okay, Ralph. Let's start with you. I'm sorry about that.
I would say 100%.
Okay.
In all honesty, and frankly, we know, and this is mentioned in the book also. We know that 34% of freshmen today drop out at the end of their freshman year, which is really a national tragedy. 34% of kids come home or transfer or drop out of school completely after their freshman year in college. And a lot of that has to do with a lot of the things that were mentioned earlier. A lot of it has to do with kids taking lots of AP and IB classes and stepping into college as effectively as a sophomore when they're intellectually there, but not emotionally or socially there. So, they step in with 18 or 25 or 30 college credits and become sophomores their first year and then get thrown into a big mix that they can't deal with. So colleges need to do more. 34% is unacceptable. Colleges should be pushing for 100% or as close as possible.
Wow. And
poor decision-making really is at the root cause of all of this.
Right. And that's an interesting thing that you bring up, because that is certainly a point of pride. How many AP classes you take, and then parents are delighted to hear that, they might save a semester of college or something like that, but really not thinking about whether their students are ready socially and emotionally.
Right.
And
their classes first semester, and they're not taking the classes that you and I traditionally took to kind of step into college, which is, freshman English composition, freshman world history, those kinds of things. They bypass all of that, and they're suddenly thrown into an advanced physics class or an advanced history class, and they're intellectually ready for it, but in many ways they're not socially or psychologically ready for it.
What were you going to say, Linda?
I was going to basically echo the same thing, except to even add that sometimes they're not even ready academically for the class because their AP calculus class might cover the basics. But, for example, an engineering program might go into way more depth in their beginning calculus class. And so if you advance because you have AP to their second class up, you may not be academically ready for it.
Yeah, good point.
Right. Now, here's something I want to ask you all about. How has the proliferation of the online universities figured into decision-making and decision-making for families and, high school seniors? Do you ever hear anybody saying that that's their choice out of high school, that they're going to do one of the online universities instead of going to one of the traditional brick and mortar institutions? And then we'll talk about community colleges as well.
Right. I think Dr. Farina was onto something. What the media doesn't cover is what the vast majority of kids are doing. Because I think today, what we talk about the kid going off to college and staying in a dorm, it's less than half of the total percentage of kids going to college nowadays. So most of them are doing something that is not the traditional or commonly known of going to stay in a dorm, going to a big university. A lot of them are going to community college. They're starting in community college. They are taking online courses. They already have an associate's degree because they went to a high school that offers something called dual enrollment, where you can get college credit. Like, for example, in D.C., the School Without Walls has a program where you can get an associate from George Washington University while you're attending School Without Walls. Okay. So the media covers the traditional 4-year go stay at the college type of setting. It also covers, attendance at the top universities, but it doesn't really cover the experience that most kids are having, which is online. My son took some online courses, and getting credit in the summer at a less expensive university, like a community college. So you might be able to go to Northern Virginia Community College, or in order to take your English, but you take it back to Barnard in the fall.
Sure.
You might be able to take an online course.
Right. Okay, and how about you? What were you going to say, Ralph?
Well, I think your question, and I agree that with all that was just said. I think your question, if I heard it correctly, was: do kids choose online universities in replacement for a 4-year university? And
yes, I was wondering.
I've been teaching now for 34 years at the community college. I don't know of any students who have actually gone online completely, but I can tell you there are a lot of students who take online classes through the community college or in other venues to augment what they do in the classroom. So it seems to be kind of a hybrid mix of both. Okay. One of the essays in the book is titled The Changing Face of Higher Education. Yes. And it clearly is changing. There'll always be a need and a market for 4-year universities and colleges and community colleges, but the online revolution really is growing. There's a lot of opposition to it in traditional academic circles. That's mentioned in the essay also. But I think it's going to be a hybrid mix over the next 20, 30, 40, or even 50 years.
Okay. All right, then. So now you talked a bit, Linda, you alluded a bit about the kind of peer pressure, and I know you wrote about it as well in your book, Ralph, that parents are under. I mean, teens too, but to get into a prestigious college and then go, and very often it's really not the right fit for them, but they can't say when they're around their circle of friends that I'm going to the community college or I'm going to take online classes. Right. So let's talk about that.
I call it zip code envy.
Okay.
We know what that's all about. We know that if you live in certain zip codes in Northern Virginia, you're going to go to college, first of all. There's no question there. And in many zip codes, you're going to go to an elite private college, maybe an Ivy League college, and you don't have much choice in the matter. So the whole idea of competing irrationally is an epidemic in Northern Virginia, and people don't look at other options. So, there are 4,700 colleges and universities in America. There's lots of colleges, and they don't all have to be Ivy League schools. So,
right.
There's no doubt about it. There's lots of pressure to go to the wrong places at the wrong time for the wrong reasons.
Sure. I want to remind our listeners that you're listening to Parenting 411 on WOLB 1010 AM Talk Radio. I'm going to take a little within-show commercial break to hear from one of our team members that wants to share an event that's going to be coming up. Let's see here. Hi, Cherie.
Hello, how are you this evening?
Fine. I'm doing great, and I know you want to tell us about the upcoming fair that you're involved with. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I am the host of the 7th annual Let's Get Serious and Recharge Health, Wellness, and Fitness Expo.
Okay.
And it's being held at the Doubletree by Hilton in Pikesville, Maryland on Saturday, May 27th from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's a family event totally geared towards just helping parents and children to take a serious look at their health and wellness. Mm-hmm. We get exercise in, we have cartoon characters for the kids, free healthy food samples, and the entire event is no cost to families. So just wanted to encourage everyone to come on out to this free family community event and getting to know about your health. It's time to recharge our batteries and get healthy.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Cherie, for sharing that with us, okay? And you have a great day.
Keep up the great job.
Okay, thank you. All right, then. So now, what is your response to those who say that today's college freshman is really coming into college woefully unprepared to do well? Is academic ability the problem, immaturity, lack of social skills? Linda, how about you? What do you think?
I think it's a combination. First of all, there's an enormous amount of pressure on these kids to organize, not just to be good at academics, but in the most competitive of college processes, you have to be good at academics. You have to have high test scores. You're supposed to have some outstanding extracurricular activities, and that includes service. So, I think there's a lot more pressure, but I still think underlying all of that is a 17-year-old or 18-year-old kid whose brain, according to what we now know about science, is still not fully developed. Their decision-making centers are still forming. Mm-hmm. They may come from a variety of schools where there's grade inflation. So you really don't know academically, socially, and emotionally who's going to walk into the door, despite the fact that they might have fairly high scores and a fairly high GPA. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've seen real differences in how schools, public and private, prepare kids to write. Mm-hmm. And to be able to express themselves. And, some colleges, when you go to them, if you major in certain things, you have to do nothing but papers. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that involves not only being able to write, but being able to organize yourself and manage your time, because they'll tell you the papers due December 12th in September.
Okay.
With not a whole lot of intermediary steps.
Sure.
So, I do think, and maybe Dr. Perino can speak more about it, that I think the level of preparedness varies widely across schools and across kids and individuals. And I think the colleges have varying degrees of success bringing kids up to speed.
Right. Did you have anything to say about that, Ralph?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think yes, to some degree, they are coming ill-prepared. Could be based on immaturity, social skills, a variety of things you just mentioned. I think a lot of students show up, and I think Linda would agree, a lot of students show up as excellent test takers. They're in test-taking mode. Mm-hmm. They've been tested for 10, 12 years, and they know how to take a test, but they lack enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. They lack intellectual curiosity. They lack creative thinking. They lack problem-solving skills, writing skills, basic public speaking skills. And too many students come to think that passing a class, or better yet, or maybe worse yet, earning that expected A is what it's all about. Mm-hmm. And I would point everybody who's listening to a very interesting book that I read just last year. I highly recommend it. It's titled The Global Achievement Gap, written by Tony Wagner.
Okay.
And Tony looked at the global achievement gap and traveled around the country and the world, I guess, and spoke to lots of CEOs and identified what he called the 7 survival skills that are necessary for somebody to be successful in life. And those survival skills had nothing to do with math or science or computers. They all address the issue of writing skills, critical thinking skills, public speaking skills, working in collaborative groups, problem solving. And I think a lot of kids coming to college today are lacking those core skills. And again, they're excellent many of them are excellent test takers, but lack the intellectual curiosity and all the other things that are necessary, as we as adults know, are essential for success in college, graduate school, and clearly in life and on the job.
And I want to remind our listeners that this is Parenting 411, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. And we have on our show today Dr. Ralph Perino, and we are discussing the college decision-making process. And Ralph Perino is the author of Issues, Strategies, and Concerns in Education today, and we're touching on a lot of the issues that are in that book today. And also, we are speaking with Dr. Linda McGee of McGee & Associates in Chevy Chase, Maryland. So now I want to shift to the right college. What makes for the right college?
Linda, you want to take that one?
Go ahead. Oh, I'll start then. Why don't I start and you can add in?
Right.
I think it's not the one that ranks the highest. I think it's like I always ask kids that come into my office and that I meet all around the country. I ask them where do they see themselves. Do they see themselves at a small college? My son is what I call a city slicker. He likes big cities.
Yeah.
So I try to get them to start narrowing it down. Do they want big or small? Do they see themselves in the wilds of New Hampshire? Right?
Okay.
Or do they want to stay close to their parents? I mean, I talk to a lot of kids that say, I really want to stay within 2 hours of my parents' home, and I say, well, that's fine.
Right.
I encourage that. Also, what is your major? Right? For example, some schools are strong on engineering. Some schools are not. Some schools have business programs. Some schools don't really have undergraduate business schools. For example, a lot of Ivy League schools don't really have undergraduate business program. They have economics, but they don't have a traditional business degree.
Okay.
And then I look at not the kid, my own included, not having extensive, heavy debt at the end of so the money is very, very important. And what can you afford? You don't go. We don't shop for anything other than college without looking at the budget first.
That's a good point.
It's just like it would be as if we went out and we went to a Mercedes dealer and we bought the car and then we asked for the price. We don't do that. But we do it, and that was one of the things, even knowing better, one of the things that I did that I wouldn't do over. I would definitely narrow down a list with my, based on money.
Okay.
And then finally, you look at where your child might thrive. I mean, I look at a lot of times, especially, depending on the kid, I say this kid looks like they could be a leader, but they need to go someplace where that's going to be brought out.
Sure.
For a particular girl, it might be a girls' college or it might be a smaller school where they might get good mentorship. I went to a big state school, very good education, but not a huge amount of mentorship.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And
all of those questions I would ask.
Sure. And parents would really, I can certainly say that I have been pleasantly surprised on the college visits that our family has done with our sons, because there were a couple of schools that I really was just going to check off a box. Say we saw it, it's in state, we probably should apply. And then got there and really was so pleasantly surprised. I mean, there was one college we went to that it was destined to be a bad visit. We had a little bit of a fender bender on the way. It was pouring down rain. It was a school that just has a history of just being a good safety school. Just don't put too much stock in it. And I just got there and just really from the moment I sat down, the admissions director, her energy, first of all, and I don't even think it wasn't even rehearsed, the energy she brought, and then the facts, what she shared with us. And I went home. I had one son with me, and he definitely wants to apply there. But I came home telling the other son, don't forget about this school because they have a lot going for them. And I was able to tell them a lot about it. But again, that was a day that it could have been an Ivy League school almost. With what happened to me before I could even get there to the school, I just was not in a good position to like the school. And then I was just pleasantly surprised. I'm very excited about it. And it's not an Ivy League school, but it looks like it really would have a lot I don't know if both of my children will go to the same school, end up going to the same school, but I could see where it has a lot to offer for both of them in terms of helping them succeed long term and finding the career that will fulfill their dreams. And so parents need to be open to that.
Point, Carol, and that is that when parents and students visit schools, they're looking for the creature comforts, things like accommodations and availability of food and public transportation and things of that sort. But what's really more important than all of that is will the school provide a level of psychological comfort that the student will feel comfortable with? So, for example, what will the experience be socially, culturally, psychologically? Where's it located geographically? Do they like the weather? As Linda said earlier, is it an urban, rural, or suburban setting? The school size. If they went to school at a high school that was racially, ethnically, and culturally mixed, and they suddenly are looking at a school that's not so much that way, it might be hard for them to fit in. So a homogeneous school may not be as good as a heterogeneous school. So there are lots of soft issues that parents and students need to look at, not just the dorm room and the cafeteria and the beauty of the campus, all important. And the last thing I would say is the right college is really a place where after 1 month, a parent gets a phone call from his or her daughter or son who says, Mom or Dad, I love it here. I'm being challenged. I'm learning new things, and I love it. Thanks so much for sending me here. And if that happens after a month or two, they're at the right college.
That certainly is a good test. What were you going to say, Linda?
Carol, can I just add on to the point about homogeneous, heterogeneous? I mean, this is a particularly difficult issue for kids of color.
Okay.
And because, when I start looking at the process, my son goes to a school that is pretty diverse. And one of the things he said was that he liked that. And so when I went to help him start researching, I mean, that's, a school that's like a third African American it's very hard to replicate in a college.
Sure.
Because if you really look at it,
Good
it's
point.
like they're predominantly, most of the colleges in this country are predominantly white.
And female.
And then there's historically black colleges.
Right.
And not that much in the middle.
Right.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. And I guess my reaction to that would be, one of the ways to mitigate that would be to go to a more urban setting.
Right.
Sure.
From my experience,
Right. And
more
also,
urban settings.
some people, some schools and some systems, university systems, I have experienced this. They get it a little bit more. Even when the numbers are not as strong or there's not that much diversity, the kids matriculate.
Right.
And they do okay and they seem happy.
Right.
But then some places where it's just like, it seems like that they have no clue, they're not focused, and frankly don't really care.
Right.
So like I said, toward the end of the process, I was visiting more black student unions, talking to what the support systems were and how the kids actually got out of the school.
Right. And that's good. That's definitely good advice. And during the college visits, whether it's your first time visiting or you're visiting after you've been admitted, those are certainly important stops that parents and teens need to make
Right.
with, in the case, that could be a Black Student Union, or it can be talking with the students. Because I did that. I did that a lot on our college visits. I'm sure it drove my sons up the wall, but I would strike up conversations with the tour guides and just people walking around, people.
Oh, Mom.
Well, I got good information. We got good information.
Oh,
You did.
don't we
Still,
know,
Mom,
Carol?
you shouldn't be talking.
Well, I mean, they should have been asking, but you
I know. Yeah.
But
I just said I ignored the eye roll and I still did it.
Yep.
right. Well, right, and then and a lot of times once I got the conversation started, then they joined in or they were appreciative of the information. But that's definitely what you ought to do, because not just relying on the sales job,
The brochures
and the brochures.
Website. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right, and really find out what people have to say about
dig beneath the surface. Absolutely.
because you want to hear about how hard it is to get the classes that you need that are on the track for your major. Because
and the other thing too is, what are they going to do for you when you graduate? Do they have a placement office? Do they help you with a job search at all?
Right.
To me, that's a core question. I'm going to go to your university and spend $80,000 or $150,000. When I finish this thing, you're just going to give me my degree and shake my hand and say goodbye, or is there some way that I can network so you can help me with the job, with my employment situation when I graduate? That's an important question, and I don't think a lot of parents or kids ask that question.
No, definitely not. I've just, as I said, on the different trips that I've taken, I've just seen people being enamored with the view.
Sure.
One campus we went to is on the water, that they were all taken with that. And I had questions about some other things that we were not seeing, were not being shown. Right. And it's just very easy to get caught up when you get there.
You really do get distracted by the shiny objects, and but I remember going to one school, and after listening to so many information sessions, and where basically you just told a lot of fluffy things, I went to this one school, and when you said in the information session, they broke it down like how many of their kids were employed, what industry.
There you go.
Yes.
Yep.
Where they got into grad school, which for me was particularly impressive.
Sure.
Because they got into really, really top, high-level grad schools, which is, where it is a little bit more important for some majors where you go to school. But most of the time...
It's easy to get swept up in, as the movie says, La La Land, because it can be La La Land if you're only looking at the surface.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, or if I went to a college where we were voted number one dorms and number one food, and, and I'm just like, how important is that?
Right.
Right.
As
opposed to not having 600 kids in your freshman courses.
Right. Yeah, that's certainly something you want to know about as well. I mean, how many people will be in those classes? Now, Ralph, I wanted to ask you, how often do you get a chance to share your insights with teens, or I guess young adults even in the community college environment, and their families before they head off to college?
Oh, in the 23 years I've been in business, very often. I mean, probably 8 or 10 times a day. Okay. It's a pretty regular interaction.
Now, do you find
and also at the community college,
okay,
I interact with my students quite a bit about where they're heading from once they get their 2-year degree, where are they going. So I spend lots of time writing recommendations or making phone calls. So I almost have constant contact with parents and students, either at the high school or college level in that regard.
Oh, okay. Now, so the people that you're talking with, let's say at the high school level, are some of them people that are clients with your tutoring firm, or just people you know other ways? Oh, okay.
In a variety of ways, but a lot of it's through the business, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so what has been the reaction to your book? I was just really, I was really going into it thinking that it was going to mainly talk about higher education and all of that, because I knew your background and all of that. But it's got a lot of great information that talks about the socialization and education of children, really from the beginning. And so when should parents start preparing their children for college?
Sounds silly maybe, but I would say as early as elementary school.
Mm-hmm. And in what ways, when you say that, what things should they be doing?
Kids learn by modeling. Mm-hmm. So a core thing would be, for example, teach your kids a love of reading and a love of learning. Mm-hmm. If you come home from work and you sit in front of the television and your kids see you watch 5 hours of TV in the evening instead of sitting down with a book or talking with them about what's going on in school, kids will learn by modeling, and they'll simply carry that into their high school years and their college years, their adult years. Mm-hmm. So the whole idea of modeling is extremely important. That engendering and developing a love of reading and learning is absolutely critical. So, and developing the core skills in the elementary school level. People often say to me, when should you begin SAT prep? And my response is probably in the 3rd or 4th grade. Because you get to 11th grade and you call us and say, my son needs SAT prep, and he's taking the exam on June 3rd, which is only 3 weeks from now, there's not much we can do for you. Mm-hmm. But if this particular child has been prepped since early elementary school, we've got a much better chance of helping the child.
Now, when you're saying prep, are you actually talking about drilling them on tests, or are you saying shoring up these skills, the reading and comprehension,
shoring up the core skills?
Okay.
Because if the core skills are in place, whether it's math or reading or vocabulary or writing, if the core skills are in place, then when you approach any standardized exam, it's then a question of simply applying those skills to what that exam wants you to do.
Right.
But if you don't have a wide-ranging vocabulary, or you haven't read, not even the best prep person is going to get you a perfect score.
Absolutely.
And there's something you have there was a section that you had in your book under the changing face of higher education that I really made a note of, Ralph, and you said, the ancients know something many students today have forgotten. Reading develops thought patterns that then lead to writing patterns that develop uniquely within each individual. And I think that some parents and certainly some teens kind of, after they get through middle school, they kind of forget how important reading is. They kind of take it for granted. And then, of course, there's the pull of social media as well. I think this happened even before the advent of social media, but they just kind of forget. And it really does play an important role in thought patterns and developing writing patterns, just as you said. And it's a lifelong skill and activity that we should continue cultivating, and that's something
we as adults
appreciate.
Know that if you read something, whether it's a novel or poetry or a technical journal, and it captures you, and you like the writing style, you know that we kind of internalize it and say, I like this, I could probably use this, and at some point in the future, you're going to take that style or those words or that approach and incorporate it into your writing. So if you're reading a lot and getting exposed to lots of different ways of writing, then when you go to write, it's a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. And then again, you've laid that foundation, and then when your teacher says, here's a writing prompt, give me an answer, you know how to approach it. But if you don't have that reading background, and as Linda said, the vocabulary, you're going to have a tough time.
Right.
It's not just the content areas either. It's learning how to learn, study skills, getting your work done, time management, getting it turned in. Mm-hmm. All of these are really important schools.
Yep.
Right. And, it's interesting. When my children were little, I ran across a book. I mean, they weren't even a year old. I ran across a book called Teach Your Baby to Read. And I just thought it was really funny, so I bought it. And it was by Glenn Doman, who some people may be familiar with, and you, the two of you may be familiar with him. He has the Institute for Human Potential up in Philadelphia. Yeah. And so
I'm not familiar with it, but I will be soon.
Yes. Well, anyway, so he had that, and he wrote that book, and so I started doing it and started reading it and really getting the premise for why they thought this would be a good idea. And it really talked about, obviously, the confidence building. But when you can read well, you kind of feel like most any challenge that you have you'll be able to figure it out some way. If you don't know how to do it, well, I'm going to find something. I'm going to read. I'm going to look it up.
Well, curiosity.
Right.
The process of discovery. That's the other thing the kids are lacking these days.
Sure.
We talked about that earlier. The whole idea of the process of discovery. It's so easy these days to hit a button and get an answer.
Right.
It's a different process to have to dig and search and probe. And that skill, I think, is one of the sad byproducts of the internet generation. I think kids today are lacking that curiosity gene, that probing gene, that love of discovery that you and I know I did when I was a kid, and probably Linda too, had to go through in order to learn, and that's not good, in my opinion.
Well, one of the things I see too is that kids can get the grade, and they can even get the standardized testing scores, but they're not really good critical thinkers.
Yep.
They don't adapt well when circumstances change, and you don't give them the exact scenario that you've been giving them.
Yep.
And when things go
wrong,
they don't have a clue as to how to put it back together, how to problem solve.
Right.
And it gets back to Linda. That's a good point. It gets back to the whole idea of grit. Are kids being taught how to fail, and are they being taught how to deal with adversity?
Right.
And how do you pick yourself up if you are failing without completely melting down? And that's another issue. And
in defense of parents whom we're sort of implying that we're not helping our kids get to this level, I will say this, having gone through the process this year, I have even more compassion for parents because there is such an intense pressure to get your child to the next level, to get them to, accomplish as much as you can accomplish. And it's not so easy when you see other people really sort of like doing a lot for their kids. And basically hiring in a lot of people and getting things done. And then there's a pressure for you to do the same thing. Right. So I have that compassion now, having gone through the process, than before, because I really think there's a lot of intense pressure to sort of push their kids up to the next level. And sometimes parents overdo it.
Right, right. Well, now, since we're getting into our final minutes, I want to kind of talk about what happens after you get the decision and what parents and teens need to start doing. So, Linda, why don't you, since you're fresh off of the course, when those letters started coming in and you put them on the table, the dining room table, I'm just imagining. And so what next?
Well, if money is the issue, then you have to start weeding out where you get money and where you don't.
Okay.
And within the realm of money was an issue for me and my family. Okay. But if it's not, I would go with the fit.
Okay.
Where does the kid really want to go? Not where you want to go, not where grandma wants you to go. But where does the kid really want to go if finances are not an issue? And then I would, honestly, I advise a lot of people to let the kid really make the choice.
Oh, absolutely.
If money is the issue, then, you have to lay out, hopefully you will have been doing this the whole time, but you lay out the parameters for which the child can choose. Okay. And oftentimes it means that the parents eliminate a lot of schools based on cost, and then the kid gets to choose among what's left. I also advise people, and did myself, go back to the school, ask for more money. Okay, sure. Appeal of financial aid rewards or ask for more merit money. Right. And then, you sort of, I advise people to go to admitted student days. Yes. And look at the college again. And that's time when you go back, the things that we all talked about on this show, you ask about. What is your average freshman class? Does my kid have an advisor? I visited some Black student unions, and I also, visited some learning communities that's a grouping of kids within a dormitory setting. Sure. To see what the support is. Who on campus can your kid call that maybe looks like them? Okay. When they're having a problem. And then, you sort of, honestly, then when that became clear about the money, I sort of let my kid decide. Right. And they may not choose the college that you want them to choose.
And then I guess something, too, that the students can do as well is read the college blogs and also join the groups. I understand that there's often Facebook pages for admitted students and probably some other social media as well. I'm not sure, but they can do that as well, and they may find out other people in their local area, or maybe even a friend they met in summer camp 4 or 5 years ago got admitted as well, and you can find ways to connect that way. Maybe even find a roommate that way, and all of that.
Sometimes the college might have a fair they may have a dinner after you get admitted in your city, given by parents, and that's also a really excellent resource because you can go find out from the parents what's it like. School, how do you get there? All of the logistics. In my case, it was like, is there a shuttle from the airport to this college? And I was able to find that out during a local dinner that a parent gave from the accepted students.
Oh, okay. That's definitely very helpful because that's something else that sometimes parents and students forget to think about when they're picking out their college. Ralph, what were your thoughts about that? Like, what you do right after?
I guess what I would say for all parents, step back and take a deep breath.
Okay.
Recognize the fact that there are more than 4,700 colleges and universities, private and public, out there to choose from. Plan slowly, methodically, rationally. Don't get caught in the rat trap, the rat race that we all know, that Linda alluded to it earlier. And as I said before, just avoid what I often call zip code envy. Because you live in a particular zip code and your son or daughter's kids are all going to $60,000 a year colleges doesn't mean your child should. And as a matter of fact, one of the essays that's in the book is titled Matching College Degrees with the Job Market. So I often say to people on the phone, why would you send your son or daughter to George Washington University and spend $65,000 a year when they're going to get a degree in elementary education? Nothing wrong with a degree in elementary education. It's a wonderful field. But if you're going to end up with a $300,000 debt load and make $40,000 or $45,000 as a teacher, you've got a serious problem. So people need to sit back, take a deep breath, look at the entire picture, and look at options like GW if you're going to become a corporate lawyer or a neurosurgeon, or JMU or the community college, where you can go for $20,000 or even $5,000 a year. So
I often
just don't be irrational about it, and don't allow your children to force you into decisions that you're going to pay for. And by the way, the other thing that I mentioned in the book too, and this is really important, for somebody who's in their 40s or 50s who has to save for their retirement, paying for your kid's college education is not a real good idea. Not all of it, because you should be saving for your retirement. Your kids have 40 or 50 years to pay off college loans. You don't have 40 or 50 years to save for retirement if you're 45, 55 years old. So instead of spending $250,000 out of your hard-earned savings and leaving yourself in a pickle when you're 65 and want to retire, you need to rethink that one too.
Now, I'm wondering now, we pretty much focused on making the decision which college that the teen would be going to. Now, stepping back a little earlier in the process, Linda, is there anything that you would do differently or recommend with knowing all that you know now that they do differently earlier on? And it can be any step from testing, completing the applications, anything.
Okay, number one, get a rational list. Okay, know where your kid fits in. If you're, and know that you were not dealing with 1974 or when you went to college, or 1979, where everyone got into the University of Michigan. Now know what you're dealing with.
Okay.
And also know that, even if you're looking at a 25 or 30% acceptance rate, like let's say at the University of North Carolina, but that they are limited to 15% out of state.
Right.
Get in there from out of state is extremely difficult. But number one, get a rational list. Ignore the ratings and look at where your kid wants to major, and look at strong schools in your major. But realize that a lot of kids switch majors.
That's true.
So it's a whole bunch of complex things. And the other main thing that I would have done differently, and I keep stressing, is money. You should know what your estimated family contribution is. It's on every college website. You can plug into their financial aid calculators and know what the college is going to typically require you to contribute.
Okay.
I wish I had just tattooed that number to my forehead and chose a list based on that, because it was pretty accurate.
Oh, okay.
And so, there's no rescue from it. That's what basically a lot of colleges are going to require you to pay.
Okay.
And if your EFC is $60,000 and you wanted to pay $15,000, then you have the wrong school.
Then you should go to the community college.
And also,
or an in-state university.
As Dr. Reno just said, look at your major. He's not trying to dog GW, and I'm not going to try to dog Penn, but I ran across someone the other day that was looking at Penn for nursing school.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, Penn is $300,000.
Yep.
And, you can get a nursing degree at probably Nova. I know you can at Montgomery College. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't, everybody gets a job.
Mm-hmm. And you'll be an excellent nurse, too. They got a great program, the community college.
That's what I heard. Mm-hmm.
And so does George Mason.
Mm-hmm.
I have lots of students who are nursing students who go to George Mason, and they finish their entire nursing degree for less than $75,000.
I thought that a lot of kids go to grad school, and in my own process, I kept that in mind.
Right, that's true too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's something I'm thinking about as well, because one of my sons is going to study in a field that, yes, he's going to probably need graduate school.
So. And you're both going through this, so this is an interesting
well,
conversation.
Linda she's finished. Lucky her. Yeah. I'm not at the. I've already started, but our sons will be seniors next year. So we're.
My sons are 32 and 27. I feel like the world's been lifted off my shoulders, and I feel like I've been liberated.
Right.
It's just a wonderful feeling when it's all done. You did your job, and they made it through. And by the way, both my kids got out of college and graduate school with not a dime of debt.
Wow.
Both went to school in state.
Wow.
And, not a dime of debt. My wife and I always felt as though we owed them a college degree. They didn't take any loans out. I didn't take any loans out. We just worked, and they worked. And they chose schools that were reasonably priced, and they're both successful. So,
well, congratulations on that. We might have to have another show on that next year this time about how to do that, graduate without debt.
There you go.
But thank you everyone for listening, and tune in next month to Parenting 411. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Linda.
Thanks, Linda. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Spread my wings.